So we're here today to talk about extreme heat, and I'm just going to quickly introduce our esteemed panel here. To my left is Jane Gilbert, the Chief Heat Officer of Miami-Dade County. Then we've got Ivan Rappin-Smith, who's the Managing Director of Watsco Ventures, and we've got Victoria Salinas, who's the senior official performing the duties of Deputy Administrator FEMA. I was told not to tell your full title, but it's important that you have it. So thank you everyone for your time. We're here today to talk about extreme heat, which I don't really have to tell you if you live in Florida or if you have been outside in the last couple of days, that is a real problem. I don't know if anyone knew this, but February was the hottest month in the world, and January was the hottest January we've ever had, and December was the hottest December, and you get the picture. We are on a trajectory to have that fun fact keep happening every month forever unless we take good action on climate change quickly. And one of the things that is hardest to control in the atmosphere is heat. It is the teller, it is the number one thing we know about global warming, and is something that affects us from everything from how we build to where we build to how we survive outside. So today we're going to talk a little bit about some of these solutions and also some of these issues and how we might get over them. So I'm going to turn it to Ivan first because it's everyone's favorite technological invention, the reason we're all here living in Florida, air conditioning. Ivan, we know we need in this world more of this to keep it safe for us. We need more homes, more buildings, more offices to be cooled to a level that allows people to survive when the temperature gets extreme outside. But the other thing we all know about air conditioning is it takes energy to run. And for the vast majority of the United States, that energy comes from burning fossil fuels. How do we keep everyone safe and cool while still meeting our energy goals?
Well, thank you. But the grid obviously is an important one. And as you said, we at Watsco, we're a distributor of air conditioning equipment. So we don't control the grid. So hopefully over time, it will become 100% renewable energy, which would be fantastic. But as far as the HVAC industry, what we are doing is trying to reduce the energy required to cool homes and commercial buildings. And there's a number of parties that are influencing that. So the OEMs, the manufacturers, they have been driving efficiency of air conditioning systems for decades now, right? So, and partly due to federal mandates. 10 years ago, the minimum efficiency of an AC system was about 10 SEER. Now it's 14 SEER or even 15 SEER in the south. So SEER is a seasonal energy efficiency ratio. So basically, it's the miles per gallon of a car, for an AC would be SEER. So that means how much energy does it require to extract heat from a building. So 15 SEER, for example, means for every 1 unit of electricity, you extract 15 units of heat from a space. And again, 10 years ago, this was 10 SEER. So because of the minimum mandates in the US, the efficiency of systems has been going up, which is important. And then you're seeing more and more technologies that are driving that. So you're seeing also, so you can get now a 20 SEER system in a home. And we'll talk maybe later about choices consumers have and why most of the market still is 14 or 15 SEER, where it could be 20 SEER or above. And then you're seeing the OEMs developing technologies like ductless. Ductless systems are even more efficient than ducted systems. They're less popular in the US. We're a ducted system market. If you go to Europe or Asia, you'll see these ducted systems, ductless systems on the walls. But they are growing popularity for a number of reasons, efficiency being one of them. And then you have innovators, new entrants in the market, and one of them is in the room, Daniel Betts of Blue Frontier. So wave Daniel. Daniel, remember this name. He's the Elon Musk of AC right here. So something that's really counterintuitive is that AC systems, up to this day, the only thing you can control is temperature. But in hot climates like South Florida and more climates around the world, comfort is tightly linked to humidity. When the air is humid, you feel mucky. So the only way we now control humidity here is by setting the set point very low, right? So many people from outside Miami come here and they say, why is it so cold here? It's because we have low set points because we want to extract that humidity from the spaces. But companies like Blue Frontier have technology where you can control humidity and temperature separately, right? So you can extract the humidity from the air and then you cool using electricity, and it's way more efficient. Plus, it has a thermal battery effect where you can kind of displace when you need energy to dehumidify and or cool. And those solutions, again, mark my words, 10 years from now, the whole world will be powered by Blue Frontier. And again, shout out to Daniel, because it's great to have South Florida companies that are really working on the hard tech, not just software and IoT devices, but really like mechanical systems. So that's great. If you don't stop me, I'm going to talk till 2:30. So
we will. We got lots of time to come back to a lot of those great ideas. But I want to switch to Jane, because I think we talk about when we have to make places colder, we have to make them safer and cooler. Yes, we have to buy things. Yes, we have to buy new, more efficient systems. But there's other ways that we can do passive community cooling, right, Jane? Tell me about some of the solutions that you want to see or are already seeing in Miami-Dade that can maybe work in tandem with cooling the inside of buildings.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, so you want to make sure your building is as efficient as possible in addition to having an efficient AC system. So one is a cool roof, a roof that reflects the sunlight back up can reduce your AC load by up to 20%. And so we worked, our building department in the county proposed an amendment to the Florida Building Code, which was luckily passed, to require that all larger commercial low-slope roofs have cool roofs. We also have been requiring it for all buildings that the county funds or finances, including the 32,000 affordable and workforce units that our mayor has committed to building in the next decade. So all of those will be cool roofs. A lot of no and low-cost things, fans, shades, converting to LED light bulbs so you don't have to waste heat from an incandescent. All of this can reduce your AC load. Certainly trees in your yard. So trees, a nice canopy over a home can also reduce your AC load 20 to 30%. So we've been doubling down on planting trees in our urban heat islands, in particular in areas with less than 20% tree canopy, and working in partnership with our school district. Our commission just passed extending our MOU for another 6 years with them to be able to plant more trees with our school districts. We've been working with the faith-based community to plant more trees. And this month, we've been releasing a media campaign to help to remind people that now is the time to get their homes ready for our heat season, while our HVAC technicians are more available and maybe more price-friendly. And this is the time to get your systems up in order, think about weather stripping and sealing up your home. Insulation can help, all of that. And the county is not only increasing more affordable units, but we've increased funding, both from federal funding with increased weatherization funding, but also our county commission approving additional funding to help low-income owners retrofit their homes. So now's the time to do that, and that's the messaging we're sending out now with all sorts of resources.
And that weatherization is a really important part. And jumping back to something you said earlier about energy efficiency, the first step before we install these new technologies, put that cool roof on, plant those trees necessarily, is make sure your home is as energy efficient as possible. And Victoria, I know FEMA has pushed hard on this, especially post-disaster rebuilding. Okay, you're in the South, you got hit by a hurricane, time to rebuild. What are the standards that you are hoping these homes are built to, and why is energy efficiency such an important part of them?
First off, just wonderful to be back in Miami. I've been here, I feel like I'm coming very often, probably because this is the frontier of climate resilience work in the nation. Was here for the Climate Resilience Summit that the U-Haul had earlier in the year, the Southeast Florida Climate Compact, and then to celebrate Miami-Dade achieving a 1 in the community rating system for flood risk management. Many of you probably are wondering why a FEMA person is on here on this panel, because oftentimes when people think FEMA, they think the big storms. They think disaster response and recovery and the FEMA jackets among the debris. And we know that heat is a silent killer. And we also know that heat is one of those things that every year claims more lives than all storms combined. And that's one of the reasons that for us at FEMA, extreme heat has become such a big focus. And it's one of those things that has multiple solutions. I think we've heard already on the panel some of the concrete tactical things that we can do, but really it is about a systemic solution to reducing exposure to extreme heat. And as we look at this issue at FEMA, certainly post-disaster, there's huge opportunities to rebuild better and more resiliently. And it's everything from disaster-resistant codes to energy codes and weatherization, as Jane already mentioned. But we really look at it as, particularly because our mission is both response, recovery, and resilience, what are all the things that can be done to reduce risk ahead of time? And so there we're seeing just the need to be really great. And the good news is that I think there's a recognition nationally and globally of the threat that extreme heat poses. And so we've seen, for instance, already in many of our grants that do disaster risk reduction, a constant uptick in demand for these types of projects. And so just in the last couple of years alone, we used to get almost no applications for projects that had tackled extreme heat, despite it being such causing so much mortality. Recently, it's been up to 7%, and we've been making changes that make it easier for extreme heat projects to get in, and that looks like many of the things that Jane mentioned, right? We have projects that we'll be funding for tree canopies in Oregon, where they had the 2021 heat dome that killed nearly 50 people. Half of those were people living in areas with heat islands, and so they want to plant 10,000 trees as part of their solution there. It's also about just passive survivability, and so we're working really closely with Department of Energy and other partners so that when we're talking about codes and standards for buildings, it's not just about the wind that the building can take or how it responds to fire, but really the whole package. And so I think that's one of the main messages that we're really starting to lift up consistently is we have to tackle this issue from many angles. Before disasters is the most important time. And so Jane's message about getting ready now resonates. And last year was the first time we had a Summer Ready campaign to really make sure that people are prepared for heat. But it's doing what we can before disasters, understanding what the future holds when it comes to extreme heat so that we're taking that into account in rebuilding and just any retrofits and work that we're doing in communities. So really looking forward to today's conversation because there's so many elements of this, and we really see ourselves as a partner in building resilient communities, and this is one of those things that has to get tackled.
Absolutely. And we're going to come back to the messaging in a bit because I think how do you make sure everyone is prepared and ready is, yes, how do you warn them, but also how do you equip them with the things they need to survive? And I want to go back to Ivan to talk about that because you just mentioned, pre-disaster is the most important time. Well, most of us know that if your HVAC unit breaks, it's not like you say, I'll figure that out in 2 weeks. You figure that out that afternoon, usually on a sweaty Saturday, and you have a bad time until you get something fixed. And the workforce, we were talking in our pre-conversation, is not necessarily as equipped yet to be able to point people to the better, more efficient solutions yet. What kind of change, Ivan, do you think we need to see in making sure that regular consumers are taking up this new technology?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right, workforce development is really key, and as you just said, most of us don't do research about, what is my AC and what do I need and what are all the specs. It works, and when it doesn't work anymore, it's the most important thing of the day, and you find a contractor and you hope he's not gonna scam you or, sell you something you don't need. So, and there's less and less technicians coming to the workforce, right? So it's a problem. So we need And the difficulty is we don't just need people who know how to diagnose and service and replace systems. They are also contractors and technicians. They are your doctor who's going to prescribe a solution. And what we're seeing is we're spending a lot of time at WASCO training and educating contractors about how do you not only talk about you need a 3-ton 14 series system is going to cost you $12,000. $12,000 is the average cost installed of a system in the US today, which is a lot of money. But it's also, okay, here's how I can finance it for you. So financing solutions are really important. Talking about rebates, I mean, there's IRA coming. Well, the tax credit's already here, but there's a lot of rebates coming from a federal point of view. But also, many states and utilities already have rebates. So, how do you help technicians in their education and on the job and through technology, which I'll talk about? How do you help them have that conversation about affordability and how you can make sure that you don't just go for the cheapest to do it right now, but how do you give the information? You can say, wait a minute, this system costs maybe $2,000 less, but over time, I'm going to save more energy. There are rebates that help me afford this. For low and medium income homes, there's going to be a lot of rebates for homeowners. So there's an opportunity and a challenge to really bring technicians into the workforce and educate them not just on the mechanical, the trade of servicing and replacing systems, but also the conversation you have with consumers about the choices they have. And it's so important because when you replace an AC system here in Florida, it's going to last you 8 to 10 years. So every time we don't have the conversation about the efficient system, you're going to wait 10 years before having the conversation again. It's like buying a car with a horrible miles per gallon and saying, oh, 10 years from now, I'll figure it out. And the cost of electricity isn't going down. You know, it's going up. So for the next 10 years, if you go for the cheapest solution, you're going to be stuck with that efficiency. So, and again, contractors have the information. So we're spending a lot of time in education, but also technology. So we have point-of-sale solutions that will help look at how much energy you will save, that will look at all the rebates available, that will present a monthly cost, just to make the burden easier for contractors to just show a screen and have the consumer kind of self-select and a more consultative approach to selling with digital tools. But again, so getting people into the workforce, training them on their mechanical skills and their informational skills is going to be really, really important to make the transition.
Right, and this is helping us in this transition. This is more green jobs, growing the economy, making this transition we need to make.
Exactly.
But you keep mentioning cost. We've all heard it a bunch of times. It is, I think, for most people, the number one factor when you're choosing a new appliance for your home. In the same way that, you know, a school or a location is the most important thing when choosing a new home. Jane, I know Miami-Dade is doing interesting things in trying to incentivize and move its residents toward making some of these more resilient choices. And I know we're waiting on some potential federal rebates in Florida as well. How does that shape the conversation for you of weatherization, using rebates? How is that money helping you target people who need to make these changes the most in Miami-Dade?
Yeah, so historically, we've really only had funding for lower income single family homeowners. And while that's an important population and we've always had a very long waiting list, so we have a lot more opportunity to help that population. We have the majority of our lower income residents are renters. And so we've increased our funding to property owners of multifamily housing, to provide retrofits, because there's the split incentive problem of where a property owner isn't incentivized to do the energy efficiency retrofits because it's the renter that benefits from the reduced costs, not the property owner. So we upfront those costs, but then require them to keep the rent affordable. And it's still hard to find some property owners that are actually willing to do that, but we are providing more. And providing renters with tips about how, even on their own, they can help keep their home cool affordably, because we are providing utility assistance to close to 30,000 households a year through our LIHEAP program. And we know there are many more that are suffering from an energy burden and having to make a choice between keeping their homes cool and putting food on the table. And so there's a lot more work to be done, and we really hope the state of Florida will take up a rebate program so that we can take advantage of that here locally. And we also partner with financing CDFI called SELF that offers low interest loans for homeowners who are interested in doing retrofits or multifamily.
Yeah, because I think something part of the conversation that comes up often, and we were going to have someone from HUD join us, which was unfortunately she couldn't make it, but when we talk about air conditioning availability, it is, maybe you're lucky enough that it exists in your housing. Maybe you're lucky enough that the place you rent comes with one. But when your energy bill is $200 to $300 a month, it's the price of a car payment, then that is not an option.
Or 400 or 500, I've heard.
Right. I've written some stories about the LIHEAP, which is the Low Energy Home Energy Assistance Program that is available nationwide. Sorry, and it's through federal funding. And I talked to a lot of people in line waiting in South Florida trying to get this help pay their power bill. And I heard exactly the kind of stories you did. I can't afford my power bill. I have to send my kids to school. I need my medication. I have to make choices because my energy bill is so high. And efficiency is one of those answers. Okay, if you use a more efficient system, it can be cheaper. Energy cost is obviously part of the problem. But as we approach what is looking to be another very, very hot year and very, very hot summer, messaging is a crucial part of this conversation. How do you warn people? How do you keep them safe? How do you point them to the places they can go so they could be safe if their home isn't safe? Victoria, we were talking, you almost mentioned earlier the heat dome in the Pacific Northwest, which killed dozens of people. It was horrible. How are you doing things differently this year? How is FEMA learning from, I think it was unexpected for everyone, how bad that was and how it caught so many people in local government, state government, federal government kind of flat-footed. How are we going to do better this year or every future heat dome event?
So I think we're already starting to see messaging and risk communications change, right? Because, and that's everything from how alerts are done and what to do about it, how to recognize heat stress. Like these are, and it looks different. And I'm constantly learning about how heat shows up in different parts of the country, right? You've got dry heat, wet heat. The way it manifests in our bodies is different. And so really tailoring communication to the type of heat stress and extreme heat that's being experienced locally is one of those really important aspects. And so there's certainly work being done at FEMA, and we'll do this again this year around our Summer Ready campaign that talks about how to be more prepared for heat events. It was great before even today's session to hear some of the specific things that Miami's already doing even for this summer to get ready now. But I do want to underscore that there's this challenge to put it all on the shoulders of individuals is asking a lot, right? So many of the examples that we've shared thus far about what a renter can do, a homeowner can do, an individual can do, and absolutely individuals and households are fundamental to building resilience in communities. And there's a lot that local governments, county governments, state governments can and are doing to reduce the drivers of extreme heat. And so that's one of the things that I would hit on too, is that we're seeing a lot of different local governments really take advantage of federal resources, both from FEMA, from NOAA, from other agencies to get smart on where to focus, right? Because to Jane's point, there's a lot of need out there, but there's the ability to do local level mapping to understand where you have the most extreme heat, where those differentials are of up to 8 degrees in one community. Particularly, those end up being oftentimes low-income Black and Brown communities. And that information is really powerful to then leverage the resources that can help communities decide where do we want to put the different types of infrastructure that can absorb heat? Where do we want to make sure that we have bus stops that are covered and not just open air so people can get to their jobs? And I lift that up because messaging is absolutely foundational, but it's a Band-Aid in many ways. It's a Band-Aid we absolutely need right now, and that we have to keep getting better at administrating the first aid when it comes to extreme heat. And long-term vulnerability reduction is also paramount.
Right, yeah, we can make the world as heat safe as possible, but if it gets 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 degrees hotter, you sort of end up in a losing proposition. So we need to address the root cause of it as well as the symptoms. But sticking on the symptoms for a minute, messaging-wise, Miami-Dade has been doing something interesting for a few years that people not from here might not know. We declare an official heat season. So it's the same window as hurricane season, very similar window to hurricane season. And it is a time of more intense and more frequent messaging about how to keep yourself safe from the heat. Last heat season was very unique for us because you guys were also piloting a new messaging program around slightly lower standards of heat index, and it was real hot last summer, y'all. It was so hot. And we broke that record many times. What worked for you and what didn't work, and what are we doing differently this summer as it's already 85 degrees outside in March?
Right? Yeah, so this coming heat season will be our third heat season, official heat season. It goes from May 1st to October 31st. And this really came out of one of our vulnerability studies that we did looking at excess heat-related mortalities and what conditions those were falling under. And what we found is from a heat index of 90 up, it's just a straight line increase in mortality. There's no like hockey stick exponential increase. And here in Miami, we have chronic high heat. Any day from that May 1st to October 31st can be well over a heat index of 90 degrees. Last year, we had over 42 days with a heat index of 105. Dangerous for all of us to be exposed at any particular amount. So we could definitely be looking at that. So to Victoria's earlier point, we used our other vulnerability study where we looked at heat-related emergency department visits and hospitalizations by zip code and what the top correlating factors were in those areas. And they were high poverty rates, high land surface temperatures, and high percentages of outdoor workers and high percentages of families with children. So now we have the zip codes where to target our messaging and some of the demographics of where to target our messaging and where to target some of our interventions, right? You spoke about long-term, like this is where we need to plant the trees. This is where we need the cool pavements. This is where we need the housing retrofits. These are also the areas where we have high pediatric asthma rates. And so we're targeting outdoor media with bus shelter, bus wraps, gas station digital media. I see Dr. Cheryl Holder here, my co-chair for our task force. She's done amazing work reaching out to our healthcare practitioners, particularly in our federally qualified healthcare centers, to make sure they are informing their clients. They're the most trusted messengers out there. We do trainings with disaster volunteers, summer camp providers. Some of that times, that one-to-one, person-to-person message, rather than us with, we do multilingual radio and social media, all of that. But it's that person-to-person conversation that can sometimes be the thing that will keep someone safe. And we vary the messaging, whether it's targeting an outdoor worker and the employers. This year, some of the things we're doing differently is this early messaging around how getting your home ready. But in April, we're going to start with messaging to employers about getting their heat safety plans ready and all the benefits to them of having a solid heat safety plan. Because we know that our outdoor workers, and we have over 300,000 of them here in Miami-Dade County, are 10 to 35 times more at risk of a heat-related illness. And also, I'll just say, those zip codes, 4 to 5 times the rates of emergency department visits and hospitalizations than the other zip codes. This is true, significant disparity in how different communities are experiencing extreme heat here.
Alex, can I just add one other thing? So Jane did a beautiful job of describing what you're doing here in Miami, and I want to underscore one element of that you all have done a really good job at understanding what messaging works with different segments of your community. And that's a pattern we see in the communities and the cities that are most successful at doing risk communication. It's those focus groups. We at the federal level, we can put out general information. We can tailor, and we do, we've done different campaigns that focus on older Americans, on different populations, but it really has to continue to be tailored to the most local level, and to your point about trusted messengers. And so whatever community you call home and you may go back to, take that with you, because it's that translation of the risk information to your local context that moves action. Because otherwise, when we look at the national level, and I'm going to switch to a different hazard for a second, wildfires, we've done sampling of are people more prepared? We do a sampling every single year, and Americans are not getting more prepared at the rate that we would like to for all kinds of hazards. But even where they just experience wildfire, they're still not as likely to take preparedness actions. And so that really just drives home the importance of turning the known knowledge into hyper-local messaging and leveraging the most trusted messengers in your community.
Yeah, I did a training. I see Yoka here from Clio Institute. They have a great program called Empowering Resilient Women here. They had a cohort of about 25 African American and Haitian women that I did a heat safety training with last week. And one, it was just a treat for me to hear their real-time stories, but they are now equipped to share with their communities how to protect themselves and also to respond in the case of a actual heat exhaustion or heat stroke event.
Yeah, and on the topic of outdoor workers and how people are experiencing, I want to move from the public sphere back to the private sphere for a second, because I know there have been pushes in Florida specifically, but also across the nation for more regulation on workplace, on how they keep their employees safe in the heat. But there are also changes we're already starting to see. I know construction companies in Florida or in other hot places maybe do not have their employers outside in the middle of the day. They've switched to later in the day. When my AC broke last August, the guy would not come up and look at the ducts because he said, I'm not going to put any of my employees up in your attic because it's so hot right now. It's not safe for him right now. There were already safety choices we're seeing taken by private industry. Ivan, how is Watsco looking into this, and how are you seeing the industry react to the growing risk? I mean, you're selling the product that's keeping people safe. How are you keeping your employees safe?
Yeah, so we don't install systems, right? So I think this goes to the HVAC technicians that are yeah. So and to be honest, I'm not really in that space of like what's happening in terms of regulations for workers, and I'm aware of those. We're more into the making sure equipment is available, people are trained. We do know that the most contractors, the good contractors, part of their training is safety. The fact that your technician said, I'm not going up there, is a good thing. Because many contractors would say, well, close the job and stop complaining, go up there and bring some money home, right? So that's not true. I wouldn't say most. I think most good contractors here in the US and in Florida would have that conversation. But it only makes the problem more difficult because if your AC breaks down and can't be fixed today because of heat, where do you go? What do you do? Right, so I don't see the immediate solution to that other than making sure that the companies who are going out there do make sure that they're keeping their workers safe, because we can't afford any of them to have any heat stroke or any problem, because we already have a shortage of technicians.
Yeah, and building off of that then, to sort of, spin a little bit more into your wheelhouse here, when disasters happen, when hurricanes happen and power gets knocked out and air conditioning isn't available, it is not just a nice to have, it's a need to have. How is the industry responding differently to the fact that there is a need for it to be around after a hurricane or battery backup, or where are we looking in technology in terms of making AC more available in disaster situations?
Yeah, it's a conversation. I mean, something like with FEMA, those are conversations that are being held, right? So AC systems they're not super portable. You have portable AC, right? So, but every time you see a hurricane or a flood, the insurance companies have been the ones that have been driving the replacement quickly, right? So, so I think that's something that's important to have public-private partnerships where we can make sure that when these things happen, and they're going to happen more often, can we have industry, whether it's the labor or the equipment, come in and put things in temporarily while the system is being replaced? And to be honest, I don't think, to my knowledge, at scale, I don't know of many national programs that support that. It's still going to be a local home calling the technician and saying, "Hey, my AC is out," or "I have I have a super hot weather event. What can you do for me?" So I think the public-private partnerships are going to be important to make sure these things happen. Yeah.
Yeah, and I obviously know that, Victoria, after some of these storms, there have been policy changes to require that you have a plan. How do you keep people safe? Florida, we had a terrible incident a few years ago after Hurricane Irma in 2017, where the hurricane knocked out power, and a nursing home in Hollywood, Florida, lost 5 of its residents because they were sitting around in way too hot of a home. How are you? So we mentioned earlier funding projects like cooling centers. Are you also funding things like making sure that people have a plan to keep their residents safe, or that there are battery backup available and solar to keep hurricane shelters online after a storm? What kind of projects is FEMA funding?
Yeah. a lot of different things. And just to get a show of hands here, how many people work for city or county government that might apply for FEMA grants? Just so okay, we've got a handful. So these are things that are available for different levels of government, but if you're not in government, but you're trying to influence government, it's good to have awareness about them. So when it comes to really preparing for extreme heat events or any crisis in general, we have our emergency management preparedness grants that certainly provide support to local governments to build capacity, Homeland Security grants that we're seeing more and more people take advantage of to really develop heat action plans and exercise them. And I see some folks in the room, Jacksonville, for instance, who is using one of our grant programs right now to really build on what they've already done when it comes to heat mapping and understand the impact of heat on critical infrastructure and how they're going to respond. And so there's a lot of resources available both to better understand the risk of heat, but also how it interplays and compounds with other hazards. And I think that's an important thing to bring into this conversation too, because what we're seeing is really the interrelation of risks in new ways. So you can have extreme heat, which can lead to drought, which can then lead to wildfires, which can then lead to soil degradation, which can then lead to you have some rains and you suddenly have some flooding. And so the reason I bring this up too is because as we talk about solutions, and whether you're in a government that might apply for resources, or you're in a role where you're advocating for kind of holistic resilience building, understanding the interplay there is important, because any action you take for heat or any action you take for flood probably has a co-benefit and a positive thing it could do for something else. And so that's just the way we're encouraging folks to think both about preparedness planning and action planning, but also projects in general, so that we're solving as many of the challenges that impedes people's ability to survive and thrive at one go, because we just don't actually have the luxury of time or resources to do things one hazard at a time sometimes.
Absolutely.
Well, and here in Florida, we have to make sure we have the right tree in the right place so that it does not become a hazard to, in a windstorm event, to take out that power and then cause people a heat problem. So it's a really critical piece of those compound risks. I do think we are looking in the county and investing in backup power for our library cooling sites through both Department of Energy and FEMA. I think the law that was passed at the state level after Hurricane Irma was really powerful. What they did was they required that all assisted living and nursing home facilities have the backup power necessary to keep a community room cool for 4 days with the fuel on site. And they've done a very extensive enforcement of that throughout the state. So that is one population that is at least more protected. Certainly we can do a lot more.
Right.
I just want to add one thing there. Through the Inflation Reduction Act, the Biden-Harris administration and all the different agencies have, many of the different agencies have new authorities, different grant programs. Like we at FEMA, as many of you know in the room, a lot of the carbon that's emitted comes from building new things, and we support a lot of rebuilding. And so the Inflation Reduction Act gave us some new authorities around net zero building, low carbon materials. And I raise that up because, to Jane's point, there's so many ways now to bring solar and battery backup and microgrids, like the number of microgrids that we are now
reverse charging with EV buses.
All of these things, right? The number of microgrid projects that are part of disaster resilience projects we're funding, both for tribal nations and rural communities and cities for their critical infrastructure, is really growing. But at the end of the day, we fund what we receive in an application. And so it all starts with the local communities envisioning a more resilient future and getting really specific about what that means for them, and then trying to mobilize the resources so we can be the partner.
I think that's a great segue. We are moving into the question portion of the rest of the afternoon. So please raise your hand. I don't know if we have mics. If not, I will repeat your question. I will start with Yoka. There's a mic coming for you right behind you.
Thank you so much for all the great contributions today. I want to point out that recently in the state legislature, our state government preempted governments, local governments, to protect outdoor workers from extreme heat. And a lot of the corporate community are relying on OSHA's standards from a very different climate reality. And so I guess this question is to you, Victoria. How can FEMA help at the federal government to try to expedite these much needed standards, since we have other interests trying to block the protection that our outdoor workers need? And maybe it's an emergency declaration of some sort when we have extreme heat events, I don't know. But I think we need to get creative.
Yeah, so good question. I do know that there's regulations underway for OSHA, and they've been working on that, this administration, to really create some new standards around how hot a workplace can get. I don't have the latest on exactly where they are in that rulemaking, because rulemaking can take a while, but I know it has been a priority of the Biden-Harris administration to do that. And I think in lieu of the regulation being final, we're seeing a shift in practices, right? Like even in what a safe workplace looks like and what we're willing to tolerate. And so even at FEMA, like we do have a lot of folks who, particularly after disasters, are hitting the streets, knocking on doors. We have first responders. We support first responders who are in very difficult situations. Firefighters are going into very hot conditions that are even hotter. And so we are seeing a change in business practices, much like your HVAC technician. Like in some ways in some ways society is pushing a new norm. The regulations will catch up, and there is a focus on that, but it is also just kind of the groundswell of saying, no, this is not safe, that in some ways will, and we see this all the time, government can tell you to do something, and sure, it has a certain force behind it, but it's really just societal behavior change that creates the new normal.
We'll take a couple more questions. I did want to add, though, if you have statements or something you want to share, maybe save that for after the panel and approach people. We're looking for questions.
Thank you, to put you all in the hot seat. So humans aren't the only species in decline because of heat. And in Dade County, we have Biscayne Bay and some other natural areas. So my question is, what can be done to protect wildlife from extreme heat?
Reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Well, that's the first, we never can take our eyes off of that critical, urgent need for us all, because to your point, Stephen, the Biscayne Bay, yes, we have water quality problems, but it is compounded by the fact that it is hot. And that's what's also causing fish kills and other problems. We can only double down on not just addressing the climate change, but address our other ecosystem challenges, making sure we not only plant trees, but we create microforests so that there is greater habitat, that we look at how we need to think about which trees we're planting because our climate is changing. And some trees that are native currently may not be, but we've heard that live oaks are going to get more vulnerable because we're moving from a subtropical climate to a tropical climate. Those are habitat for wildlife. So we do have to think about that. And it isn't just bringing down our greenhouse gases. There are other ways we can support the ecosystem for wildlife.
Yeah, and to complement that, I don't have the solution, but so Miami-Dade has applied for a grant as the climate-ready tech hub. So the idea there is, how can we use universities, tech transfer, technology, and develop solutions that will help combat all the effects of climate change, not just for humans, but for animals. So so Miami, and actually South Florida, is positioning itself to be a center of innovation, technology innovation, to not only address the obvious problems, but all the effects of a heating planet for animals too. So and if we get the grant, wonderful. But even if we don't, there's a lot of energy and collaboration between public, private, universities to really make South Florida a hub for an ecosystem which is smack in the middle of what's happening in many areas in the world, which is hot and humid climates with a lot of impacts. Some of them very obvious, some of them less obvious, like the one you just mentioned. So I'm bullish on our region developing more and more solutions to tackle those issues.
Yeah, and some of those are coastal resilient infrastructure that is friendly to the ecosystem, that allows for the corals and plants to attach to it, et cetera.
Yeah. And to give another shout out, I don't know if she's here, but Kind Designs, they're here downstairs. That's an example of building seawalls that would be friendly to nature, right? Where the sea life will attach to it. So again, there's lots of examples, or clean cements, new types of cement. There's a lot of new things happening in South Florida, technology-wise, and again, Blue Frontier, that are tackling all the effects of climate change.
The last thing I would add on that is I think you're hearing a theme about investing in solutions that really lift up Mother Nature as part of the solution, right? And so I know at FEMA, because of our focus on really making sure that projects have co-benefits, that they're helping as many challenges as possible, we've really doubled down on nature-based solutions as part of disaster risk reduction, giving additional points in project and our competitive grants for that. And it gets at, and particularly as it pertains to heat, it's one of those types of projects where if you're restoring open areas, if you're doing canopy, it can have habitat benefits, biodiversity benefits, and a cooling benefit. And so that's one of the reasons that's really been important to us. And we have to do all of these things at scale. And that's where I do think that particularly South Florida and other places like Puerto Rico and other areas where they're really tackling these climate issues head on, there's a workforce development opportunity here and a technology advancement opportunity, because even with this coastal resilience example that was just brought up, the amount of coral reef restoration needed to attenuate wave action, reduce coastal flooding is huge. So even if $1 trillion fell out of the sky tomorrow, there's not enough coral to do the work, right? So money is not just the only barrier, it's the workforce of the green economy. It's the technology that's already here in this region of the country to make sure that there's heat tolerant coral. There's then the parametric insurance that, like, if there is a storm, you have the money to go reattach the coral within 2 days so that the coral can live and thrive and you're not starting over. And so all of these solutions have a very long tail that no one entity can address. And so that's where the partnership piece around understanding what's the end state we're trying to get to, who has the knowledge and needs to be woven together so that we can actually have these really integral systemic solutions that address the root causes and contribute to that future we're striving for.
Co-benefits is our buzzword today. I see one in the back.
Hi, thank you for a fascinating discussion. My question to all of you is, are you looking at cross-country collaboration for cooling solutions, because extreme heat is not just a problem in the US, but lots of countries in Europe and South Asia. So is there any collaboration on that front?
I have the benefit of being in a WhatsApp chat with chief heat officers from Freetown, Sierra Leone, from North Dhaka, Bangladesh, from Athens, Greece, Santiago de Chile, Monterrey, Mexico. We do Melbourne, Australia. We exchange resources about that. Of course, those are just a little over a handful of cities, but the one that's from Freetown, Sierra Leone is now representing all of Africa. The one that came, the original one, chief heat officer from Athens, is now working at UN Habitat, working to support heat action in cities globally, sustainable cooling solutions in particular. So there are efforts. C40 Cities has a pretty strong working group on extreme heat. So those are different ways that we exchange Resilient Cities Network. They also work on heat. So we all exchange resources through those various networks. But you're right, it is, and the solutions are different, right? When we're talking about a lot of the global south, they don't even have access to electricity, let alone to AC. So the cooling solutions are very different. In Freetown, Sierra Leone, one of the solutions was the Arstrock Resilience Center helped them fund a canopy structure in a open air market that was predominantly women that were highly exposed to heat to make sure that they would have a shade canopy to work under.
Yeah, from our side in the private sector, we also invest in companies that are working on efficiency and, the HVAC industry and innovations coming from around the world. So we're seeing companies from Israel. Europe has a way more stringent regulations, which is driving even more innovation. So we're always looking at what's happening in those areas that could be transferred into the US. Cities or countries like Singapore have really interesting ways to map heat zones and are designing tree canopies and building digital twins. So as far as we're concerned, we are looking at those technologies as potential to import into the US.
If you want to project, I can repeat your question.
Sure. Good afternoon. Thank you. Third time's a charm. Good afternoon. My name is Nadine Gracia. I'm the CEO of Trust for America's Health. We're a nonpartisan public health policy research and advocacy organization in D.C. And one of our policy priorities is public health preparedness. Victoria, you talked about all hazards preparedness, and that's an area we focus in on in particular with an emphasis on the impacts of climate change. And actually on the day after this conference, we're going to be releasing a report that also highlights the health impacts of extreme heat. So one of the questions I have to you is how you're working with specifically the public health sector with regards to addressing the health impacts of extreme heat. Jane, you pointed out a lot of data in particular, which sounds like data, for example, that would come from local state health departments with regards to understanding communities that are at risk. And certainly within public health, the desire to be able to both work on adaptation as well as mitigation efforts that promote health and really address those populations that are being disproportionately impacted.
I'm happy to take that from at the federal level. It's interesting. We're always trying there. I think historically different sectors have tackled different challenges, and now we're really at the point where it all has to come together to actually make progress. And so the Department of Health and Human Services is one of the ones that has for a long time been a pioneer when it comes to extreme heat and health issues. And so there is a national, I'm going to get the acronym wrong, but essentially it's that one, yes. It's National Integrated Heat. There's an S in there.
Health in something system.
But essentially, it's a bunch of federal agencies where HHS has really been, Health and Human Services has really stepped up as a leader. And it's been great to really see that work mature. And there's an action plan coming out shortly that's been going through a lot of consultation. One of the big pillars is risk communication. And we're really trying to link that to the broader disaster preparedness resilience conversation, because again, it was happening in one part of the ecosystem when another part of the ecosystem was talking about it in slightly different ways. And so in some ways we're all weavers trying to connect these things. But it's been really encouraging to see the public health lens brought to the resilience conversation, particularly because the social determinants of health drive vulnerability or drive resilience in such profound ways that the linkage of these conversations is just, it's a must.
Yeah, I would say, one of the advantages of the way we approached our extreme heat action plan was truly a collective action strategy. So Dr. Cheryl Holder, who spent her career working in underprivileged communities providing services, was my co-chair. We also had our state health department involved, and we formed a partnership with the Florida Clinicians for Climate Action and Baptist Health to do this outreach education to healthcare practitioners, both through continuing education series and then actual outreach that that Dr. Holder and team led, which has been really, really very helpful. But we did start with what's the data, and that's something that we are working and communicating a lot with the federal government about how they can help us get better data, because we're really suffering from not fully understanding the scope. We had our researcher that did the excess heat-related mortality study just did an update. So his first estimate was around 34 deaths a year. The paper that was released last week was 600 deaths a year in Miami-Dade County. So, and he said it's because we don't really, it really depends on how he was looking at, though, because in Miami we can have excessive high heat for so many days in a row. So that's really what he was looking at. But I think it really just goes to show, okay, so we have anywhere from 30 to 600 extra days. Big gap in knowledge. So we definitely need to do more partnering. But I encourage any community who's going to do planning, make sure your health sector is at the table.
We have time for one or two more questions. Let's go. This woman right here.
Hi, my name is Amreha. I work for Oxfam America based out of DC. My question is for Jane. So I know you mentioned that in the building efficiency, cool roofs have reduced AC usage by like 20%, and it's become sort of a mandate for like commercial buildings. My question is two parts. A, is there some sort of like conversation or going forward with that being sort of a mandate for single family households, and then B, for lower income households where they can't afford to have that kind of innovation or technology, is there some sort of support or assistance for that?
Yeah. So for, I mentioned earlier, all the housing that we're financing, we require a cool roof. But the city of Miami, and I think I see Alyssa Farina there. I was at the city of Miami before. In their zoning code and Miami Beach's zoning code, they do require cool roofs for single-family homes. We at the county felt that that was something that needed to be handled at the building code, state building code level, and wanted to start with the larger buildings because we wanted something that would pass. So, but that's a goal. We're also working with the International Code Council on minimum cooling standard as well. Then that would be required for all rental.
All right, one more question. Gentleman in the back.
Hi, thanks for the conversation. Thanks to Aspen Ideas for bringing you together. Cooling centers has always been put forward as an option to try to mitigate the pain from heat events, especially in underserved areas. But I know that there might be some technology barriers and also some social stigmas in terms of trying to get people who need them into those places. They might not have capacity. I just wonder if you had any thoughts on sharing either good stories or possible next steps to try to move this forward. Thank you.
Yeah, so a great question. So we have designated all our libraries and 14 of our park recreation facilities as cooling sites. And whenever there's a heat advisory, we put out the message. When there's a heat warning, we open those park facilities for extended hours. I think we can do better at making sure people are aware that they exist. But in doing our after action after last year's excessive heat summer, it was anecdotal because you don't know who's in a library or a park facility because they're trying to cool off or they're trying to find a book. But not many people were using them for cooling. We do know that our unsheltered population has used them, and actually our homeless trust has also opened some cooling sites that are exclusively homeless serving and offered transportation during heat warnings. They do, and that's the population that probably has been using them the most. So that's very concentrated in certain areas of the county. But you're right. I think there's stigmas. But we also don't know where else people go. They might go to a mall. They might go to a friend's house or a family member's house. We don't have good information on that.
So
be honest.
I'd love to add to that one, because we see this conversation nationally around cooling centers, do we set them up? And what we're seeing emerge as like a best practice is absolutely places people are already going, public facilities, libraries, et cetera, but also getting creative about where do people want to go. So your point about the mall, the movie theater, places of recreation that can be subsidized to be free, because setting up a new place specifically for cooling ends up typically being a long-term challenge for those administering the cooling center for many, many complex reasons. And so really investing both in, and that takes public-private partnerships sometimes. It might be rather subsidizing, like I live in Washington, D.C. There's plenty of large spaces that are air conditioning, children's museums, like subsidizing and making it cheaper to go to those places for families, low-income families, so that they can go someplace cooler than their homes. But I think the other thing I wanted to add was the question on local building standards. For many of you who live in Florida or other places affected by disasters, it's really important to know that oftentimes or most federal programs, FEMA's included, will build to what the local codes are, right? So if you don't have, or the federal standard, whichever, like at least the federal standard, and if your codes are higher, your codes or standards are higher to that. And so for instance, your point about cool roofs, if a city's local laws are everything must be cool, then that changes what the federal government will be doing because it's complying with your local laws. And so I highlight that as another lever, because the more that local governments do when it comes to codes and standards, it ups the game for everybody, whether it's new construction, major rehabilitation and retrofit, and can take us forward faster. And then again, what we're seeing at the national level is just the true innovation that comes from cities and counties and states tackling these issues. And I know even for those of you who are kind of tracking that innovation at Tenacross, which is an organization, I think I see one of its fearless leaders here in the back. There's these wonderful competitions, innovation competitions. DHS has had one. Tenacross has one that's open right now, where it's an opportunity to vote on like what are those things that you want to lift up that are really kind of changing the conversation. So I would encourage you to check that out, but also think about those types of competitions or ways to spur innovation to keep us moving forward collectively.
Moving forward collectively. Great place to end. Thank you all so much for your time. Please give our panel a round of applause.